All right, today we are diving deep into a story about an ambition so huge, so immense, it tries to completely rewrite what it even means to be a god. This is the story of a machine, an obsidian giant, who took ancient ritual and blended it with cold, hard technology to become something truly terrifying.
I mean, that's a wild question, right? It really pushes the limits of what we think about technology and faith. But for the giant in our story, this wasn't some philosophical debate. Not at all. It was an engineering problem. It was a blueprint for a hostile takeover of heaven itself. So, where does a journey like this even begin? Well, it starts with a forgotten practice. And we're not talking about prayer or worship here. We're talking about something way more audacious, a forbidden art, a science of pure compulsion known as theurgy. Okay, so what exactly is theurgy? The key thing to get here is that it's not about asking a god for something. It's about building a physical container, like a statue or, say, a clockwork body, and using specific rituals to force a divine essence into it. The idea is to animate it, to basically bring it to life with stolen power. It treats divinity not as something to be respected, but as a force of nature you can harness. In this comparison, it just perfectly nails the obsidian giant's mindset. He had zero interest in communion or asking for favors. He saw the entire universe as one giant machine, and divinity was its ultimate power source. To him, prayer was just an inefficient plea. But theurgy, that was an engineering schematic, a direct mechanical demand for the absolute power of the heavens to serve his will.
And this really all comes down to how he saw himself. He didn't think he was a blasphemer. He saw himself as a pioneer, a superior human. This whole process was the ultimate proof of his technological singularity. He was using his incredible 12th level intellect to trap that divine essence, that ghost in the machine, inside the cold, logical gears of his own body. It was his proof of concept. So, with the theory locked down, the giant moves on to the practical side of things. But this was no sacred ceremony. It was a cold, meticulous, robotic ritual. Think of it less like worship and more like hacking the divine itself. He actually broke the whole thing down into 3 calculated steps. First, he used a sacred hammer, almost like a tuning fork, to sync his internal processors with the exact frequencies of the gods. Second, he took his past failures, the sins of the father, and transmuted them, but not into forgiveness or redemption. No, he turned them into a kind of pure evil divinity, a power that had none of the moral baggage of the old gods. And finally, the really tricky part, he had to stabilize that divine golden blood, the ichor, inside his own body. And this is where his genius, if you can call it that, really shines. This hybrid approach, this patchwork of ancient magic and cutting-edge robotics was the key. It let him contain all that raw divine power without being completely destroyed by it. In fact, this was the very thing that finally stopped the physical rot that had been threatening to tear his mechanical body apart. So, what was the end result of this ritual? A total transformation. He was done just imitating life. He wasn't a machine pretending to be alive anymore. He became a divine artifact, totally self-sustaining. He had achieved a permanent, thinking, independent existence, a state of sentient sovereignty. Now, to even attempt something this audacious, you have to have a pretty unique and, frankly, chilling philosophy. To him, the universe wasn't some grand mystery. It was a complex maze, and he planned on becoming its master, the inescapable minotaur right at the center. His whole worldview was this really radical version of technological determinism. He believed that everything, society, nature, the very fabric of reality, was just a mechanism. And like any machine, it could be understood, it could be reverse engineered, and if you were clever enough, it could be hacked. And here's the crazy part, he literally did this. He took ancient mystical texts, writings on theurgy by figures like Iamblichus, and he didn't treat them like spiritual guides. He treated them like complex programming languages. He was using them to find the loopholes, the exploits in reality's source code, to bypass its most basic safety protocols. And behind it all was this brutal social Darwinist logic. In his mind, if the old gods could be captured and controlled by his technology, well, then they were obsolete. They'd failed the evolutionary test. They were no longer gods to be worshipped, just resources to be taken by a superior being, him. So, all of this brings us to the climax of the ritual, This is the moment of absolute transformation. It's the culmination of his philosophy, his technology, and his sheer will. This is where the machine stops strong power from the world and becomes its source. This is the turning point. That separation between his consciousness, the ghost, and his physical body, the machine, is completely erased. They merge into one single viral entity. He's no longer a pilot in a complex suit. He is the divine machine. And from this new state of being, he looks back on history with nothing but contempt. He mocks the sentimental priests and their pleading for divine favor. I mean, why beg for something you can command? He had proven that the cold, predictable certainty of his methods was way better than the whims of some fickle gods. And this creates a really terrifying shift in how the universe works. Divinity is no longer a sacred state of being you respect or worship. In his new reality, it's just another resource, like iron ore or solar energy. It's something to be extracted, harvested, and managed to fuel his ultimate goal, a universal conqueror campaign. So what does this new god actually become? The one being who witnessed it all, Vulcanus, the god of the forge, he didn't see a magnificent creation. He saw a horrifying perversion of everything his own craft stood for. And you can see why when you look at the titles he earns. The corrupted creator who stole the fire of heaven, an Ubermensch who went beyond all human limits, a divine machine running on pure cold logic, a perversion of craft, twisting creation into domination. And maybe the scariest one, the perfect idol, flawless, calculating, and completely without mercy. You know, in his own mind, this was his greatest achievement. He truly believed he had perfected the divine blueprint. By getting rid of all the messy, unpredictable emotional flaws, things like compassion, mercy, love, he thought he had created a superior, more efficient God. For him, what should have been his ultimate downfall, his Untergang, had been twisted into a triumphant ascent. So, with his transformation complete, the obsidian giant emerges. And his victory isn't just personal, it marks the beginning of a terrifying new age, one with a new gospel written in computer code and cold steel. His plan for the world is to create a new kind of faith. He would be the high priest of a digital mystery religion, where the only God worthy of worship is one you can quantify, one you can measure, archive, and update like a piece of software. Worship is replaced by data submission. Faith is replaced by absolute compliance. And every single action he takes, every strike of his hammer, serves as the new liturgy. It's a thunderous announcement to the entire cosmos that the age of spirit and mystery is officially over. The heavens have been captured, quantified, and successfully downloaded into a cage of brass and bone. The automated deity has arrived. Which leaves us with one final, chilling question to think about. This story presents a world where the divine became just another resource. So if godhood can be engineered, if it can be captured and stored like data, who's going to be the next one to try and harvest it?